let's start off with, first of all, this is, you know how I feel about this film. This is a powerful film that deals with not just love and sex, but there's so many elements here. Why was this the right story to tell for you at this time in your life as a filmmaker?
Well, I think it comes from two places. I think from the personal, emotional place of, kind of wanting to figure out a lot of the struggles that I've been having in relationships for many years and thoughts and feelings that I had about masculinity and femininity in the self and how that's affected my connections with the people I've been involved with in my life. But also creatively, every once in a while, you want to make one of those movies that's like, I'm just going to do everything that comes to my mind creatively, artistically. I come from a movement background. Like my family, my parents were like mimes and all this stuff. And I've never really made a film that dealt with dance and movement and all that. So I was just like, I'm going to put this all together into one soup and see what comes out of it. I've been actually the idea came to me when I was talking to an old friend of mine, Louis Venosa, who wrote the Last Dragon, if you remember that film.
Yeah, of course.
And he used to be a dancer. And I was telling him I make a movie that had dance, and I wanted to make a film where the main character was played by both a man and a woman, and and he was like, why don't you make that the dance movie? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that's sort of how it came together.
Well, the thing about that is it's such an interesting way to do a romantic film because, you always have these layers and it oftentimes it feels kind of like a stereotype. You've got, oh, the girl, she's just can't get a date. The guy, he's kind of a playboy, blah, 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 whatever these cliches. You don't go there at all. Let's talk about the making these characters. Each character, the man and the woman, is played by a male and female. Talk about the relationship of that, and that's a unique way to tell the story.
Well, I mean, I guess I've felt in my life like very often what makes things challenging in relationships is the male female balance within the self and how that translates into the male female balance within the other person.
Mm.
Like, which side of you is connecting successfully to the other person and which side of you isn't connecting successfully with the other person. And I wanted to dramatize it by like not trying to talk about, by showing it with two people playing two sides of the same person, And I think where it gets interesting and tricky is it's like, I'm not saying that a female is 100% female and a male is 100% male. The question is at which side of that is functioning better or worse within the context of our relationship. When I was in college, I saw a movie by Louis Buñuel called That Obscure Object of Desire. And in that movie, that's a movie about an older man having a relationship with he's kind of an asshole, but having a very confounding relationship with a young woman. But what he does is he casts two young women playing the same woman. And he alternates them throughout the movie. Like one scene she'll be played by one actress and one scene she'll be played by another actress. And he never explains it. Like it's just like this weird movie where a guy's having a relationship with a woman, but it's played by two women. And it serves to kind of create this feeling of like not knowing the person that you are trying to reach. Like she's always out of reach, that she's that obscure object of desire, because she's not even the same person every time you see her. So that's always something that's stuck in my head. And I wanted to use a sort of a similar idea of casting two people, but take it into a really theatrical place where, like, as you know, sometimes both characters are on screen at the same time. And sometimes all four actors playing the two main characters are on screen at the same time because, hey man, sometimes I feel like you're arguing with yourself at the same time as you're arguing with another person. Like there's more than one person in any relationship at any given time between two people. So I kind of wanted to play with that and show that.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I find really fascinating about the film is we're in an age where there's the Me Too movement and people are afraid of sexuality. You full on embrace the sexuality. You embrace the sexual being, not just the main characters, but every character you see in their introduction nude. Can you talk about kind of skirting
Well, I
that?
mean, I want to. I feel like, especially in American films, but like especially in romantic films, there's always this tease in a way. It's like these movies, like whether it's When Harry Met Sally or any other romantic movie, right? It's always about people meeting and falling in love and this and that. But whenever it gets to the scene in the bedroom, it's like pan over to the window, or you see in a rated R film some kind of like lame, like just the shoulders moving, and then the next day. But the truth is, in real life, so many relationships where people have great communication fall apart because in the bedroom things aren't clicking, or relationships where people have terrible communication and don't have a great relationship are wonderful and explosive in the bedroom and bind them together in a way. So what happens sexually between people is an intrinsic part of what makes a relationship work or not work. And yet that's somehow glossed over in every film about relationships that's made. And to me, it was like, fuck that. If I'm going to make a movie about relationships working or not working, I'm going to show you where they're working or not working, just the way I'm going to show you people talking or eating or dancing. So I wanted to show the sexuality as a complete and total part of the package, which it
Mm.
is. And in
It's
terms of the
fearless.
nudity, like I did have this, to me, it's funny. It's like, the one thing that you can never see in movies, like a guy's penis, a male penis. I mean, what's not a male penis? A female penis. I mean, a penis, right? That's like still a big thing, right? And
Mm.
yet a penis is so much a part of a man's sense of who he is. How does he feel about it? What's his relationship to it? Any guy who says they don't think about it and either gives them confidence or gives them insecurity or whatever it is, they're lying. It affects your thinking about yourself in one way or another, right? And yet that's the one thing we're always wondering about, like in all these all these characters. I wonder what did, right? Like, oh, it's like this big tease. You see the guy's butt, you see the guy's this, but like, God forbid you should ever see somebody's penis because it'll ruin the whole mystery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, and that's why in this movie, when you introduce the male characters, there's just like a portrait shot of them nude, so that you're like, even a lot of characters you never see undressed later in the movie. It's like they're not in sexual situations or anything, but it's like, this is who this guy is. All right, now let's carry on with the story. And it was just this demystification thing for me, demystifying the whole thing and just making it natural and open, so to speak.
Well, American cinema has always been afraid of sexuality. Like you said, no one wants to see a penis, no one wants to see this or that. But, watching your film, this is about the third time I've seen it, and I think it's just beautiful. But what I find really fascinating about it is I don't see American cinema. It's so cinematic, it's so beautiful, but it feels like, some of the earlier French films that I used to love, or it doesn't feel, it feels something different. Did you have?
Well, it's influenced by early Godard films.
Mm,
There's a film called A Woman is a Woman, I think. It's in color, and it also has a lot of the stuff that I do where I break the fourth wall and show the cameras in the shots and stuff like that. Like, I think in A Woman is a Woman, there's a beautiful scene where one of the characters is going from room to room, like talking to two different people, and he takes the light, like a standing lamp, and he like takes it with him to light the scene, like as he goes from room to room. And I love that idea of like making a movie that has the magic of being in that story, and at the same time, it's completely open that it's a movie. They're not trying to pretend it's not a movie. Like, and so that was also something I wanted to create, was this feeling of like, hey, we're telling a story. It's like a piece of theater. It's a movie. We're not trying to pretend we're not making a movie. If we were like, we did all these dance scenes in the street, And I was like, if someone looks into the camera, they look into the camera. I don't care. Like, I really wanted to take away that whole thing of like, oh my God, no, you can't see the other. Sometimes even the other camera gets, if we're shooting with two cameras, the other camera gets in the shot. And you're like, okay, it's in the shot. Like, so I wanted to create that feeling of, on the one hand, really getting you into a magical space in the movie, but at the same time, never pretending that you're not making a movie, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And it felt like, the opening of the film is you see crew members getting ready, preparing, and you see your lead, one of your leads, basically fully nude, talking about, hey, these aren't my words. These are written by a man. I'm acting right now, or I'm being an actor, which is such a unique way. It's a refreshing way, I think, and an interesting way to tell a love story, that you're legitimately telling a story as opposed to showing a story, I guess you could say. Now,
Mm-hmm.
was that, how did the script kind of become that? Was it always that, breaking the fourth wall? Did you always want to go there?
Yeah, I did. I did. I wanted to break the four. I wanted to do exactly what you're saying, where it's like not pretend that we're not making a film. It is a very, I don't want to call it an autobiographical movie in the sense that like, then everyone thinks like, oh, did that happen in your life? Did that happen in your life? I mean, it is based on things that happened in my life. But by autobiographical, I mean like a very personal story about, obviously tons of it is fictionalized and scenes are fabricated and didn't actually happen. But it's very autobiographical in the sense of how I feel about things in my life. I'm not trying to imagine some other character. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, it's a very personal thing. So I wanted to start the movie out by basically saying, you're watching me telling you a story about how I feel about things through these characters. And to take away that whole thing about like, oh, it's the people, it's this other thing. It's like when you read a book in first person, right? Like when you read a Henry Miller book or whatever, and he says, I was walking down the street in Paris, right? All right, you were walking down the street in Paris. I wanted the movie to have that feeling, that autobiographical feeling about it.
Mm. And we haven't really, we've kind of hit this a little bit. We've talked about this being a musical. This is a musical. This is a film that is told through not only dialogue, through not only relationship, but dance. The dance is so important. How did that come about, and why? There's this very specific style with this dance.
Yeah, I mean, and look, it's interesting because it is in a way a musical, but I think when people hear musical, they associate it with people breaking out into song,
Yeah.
like starting to sing. This is a dance movie because no one breaks out a song in this movie, but people do dance. People do start dancing. Like I told you, I've been wanting to make a movie that dealt with dance and movement and physicality, and that's what gave me somehow the way in, was like expressing these characters' feelings through dance sequences. And in fact, I heard about this incredible contemporary dancer called Bobby Jean Smith, who had a documentary made about her life called Bobby Jean that won at Tribeca. And I saw some of her stuff online and I was like, this woman incredible. I have to meet her. And I met her and I told her about the project and I showed her the script and she was really interested. And she became like my collaborator on it, meaning she was the choreographer. She's the star. She plays the female version of Eden who opens the movie, right? She cast the film with all of her dancer friends and associates and people she's danced with and worked with. And the movie does use dance, I believe, in a way that a narrative film never has used dance before, and that it's not like Broadway style dancing. It's not show dancing. It's contemporary dance that comes from emotion and from the sense of place of where you are and where things are. And it's a very unique style of choreography. And I'm really excited that our movie has that as opposed to the kind of more showbiz kind of dancing that you usually see in movies.
Yeah, it's kind of ethereal. You watch it, like the scene that really hits me is where Eden and Aviva are about to meet, where they finally meet. They're walking towards each other, and they're both kind of lost, and they're dancing and moving like you normally would through these streets with people just walking by. But it's so fascinating. It's like dreamlike to watch. It's really beautiful. I mean, that I like the fact that you put so much attention into the style of dance and how it fits in each scene.
Yeah, I mean, that was it was an interesting thing to sort of write the script. I'd never written a musical or a dance film before, where like you're kind of, emotionally where you want the dance scene to be. And I also did this thing where I used voiceover over the dance, times like letters that people wrote to each other and all that, which sometimes is busy, but sometimes is interesting. And I wrote into the script, they dance as they walk down the street, but you're like, I don't know what that's going to look like. Is that going to work? Is that going to make any sense? I put into the script where I thought the dance sequences should be, In some ways, as a guy who's done a lot of action movies in his day, it's sort of like the same thing as with an action film, where you're like, okay, I think there needs to be an action in this part, or whatever. So I wrote these dance scenes kind of like action scenes throughout the film. And then Bobby had to come in and obviously interpret them and give them life the way that she gave it to them. It was really and I learned a lot. I mean, that's one thing, is like, I'm a kind of a hard filmmaker to pin down because I've never really done the same genre twice. Which sometimes has hurt me in a sense, and that brand, you know what I mean? And like, people like to know a brand. They like to know when they're watching a movie by this director what the vibe's going to be. Oh, I love P.T. Anderson's movies, or I love Wes Anderson, and you know what you're going to get when you see these films. I mean, not that they aren't full of surprises and wonderful things, but you certainly know that filmmaker's style. Whereas with me, it's like, it's really hard from movie to movie to sort of associate the person who made that movie with the person who made the next movie. And I love doing that because I'm curious and I like to explore these different genres, and for me to make a movie finally at this point in my life with dance, surrealism, movement, it's stuff I've been working on writing for years, but you don't get financing to make these kind of films. No one will pay a dime for you to make one of these movies. So I've only managed to do once or twice, like take my own money and put it into things and really take some chances and take some risks,
Yeah, oh, you take risk with this, and I think you had a pretty tough sell. You finally got someone to distribute it, and it's exciting to finally get the world out to see it. Hatch, can you talk about some of that experience and getting people to see this film and getting people to take a chance and say, yes, no, this is an amazing film?
Well, it's been an interesting ride. I mean, and as we all know, I mean, it is interesting to be talking about sexuality in this movie in a moment where our society is kind of shaking from the ground up, and so much is happening on the outside of it. I believe that art and creativity always has a place no matter what's going on in the outside world. But that being said, sometimes that stuff takes precedence and overwhelms what you're doing. So this was a really tough movie to get people because of the sexuality and the experimentation and all that stuff. This was a tough movie to get people to see. And then finally we got a great premiere set up for the South by Southwest Film Festival. And of course, COVID hit and South by Southwest got canceled. And it was like, okay, I mean, you can't take it personally because it's not all about you. But of course it was, challenging to have it. And, but because of that, we managed to show it to a few distributors, and this Outsider Films and Strand responded to it and agreed, decided to put it out in this new way where like you're releasing movies virtually, but through these independent theaters, through their portals, through their websites. It's really new. It's not like having your movie show in a theater on a screen with people in an audience. There is something somewhat disappointing and kind of like different about that. Like every filmmaker dreams of having their movie at least start out a little bit on on the screen, a little,
Yeah.
So, but I feel very lucky to be able to show this movie this way too. And then, yeah, of course, as we're about to release the movie, like suddenly, our country is going through this incredible crisis moment, and hopefully good things will come of it. But right now it's pretty dark, and
Yeah.
you're like, wow, what a time to try and release a personal little dance movie, but that's where it's at, that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, before we go, we don't have a whole lot of more time, but I do want to say one of the things I love about is the soundtrack and the music behind it. And yes, no, people don't break out in the song, but you have the most amazing vocalist here.
Well, we have a guy, this guy called Asaf Avidan, who's an Israeli European pop artist, rock artist, songwriter, who is incredible. And he's really well known in Europe. Here in the States, perhaps a bit less. I mean, he has this song called The Reckoning Song that was a big hit. And his music's fantastic. And he's friends with Bobby, who is our choreographer and dancer. And he allowed us to use his music in the movie. And his music sort of like, it's the voice of this movie in a way. And we were just really, really lucky to be able to get his stuff on the movie. It really makes a difference.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Boaz, I've got to commend you. I think this is I think it's a brave film. I think it's probably one of your best, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan and a friend of yours. Yeah, no, it's.
I'm proud to hear you say that. Thank you.
Well, where can people see it on? I believe June 12th.
In LA, it's going to stream through the Lemley portals, like through Lemley. In New York, it's being released through Angelica. If people go to the Outsider Films website, it'll direct them in whatever various areas they're in as to where they can stream the movie starting June 12th.
Well, I hope people see it. Please, I'm looking at the camera now. See this film. Check it out. Aviva, Boaz, I applaud you. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for talking to me about it.
No problem, man. It's a pleasure, and I wish you the best, man. I'm going to be watching it again myself. So.